Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversations in Horror Podcast. We are doing a little bit of something special this month. My name is Kevin L. Powers. I'm the festival director, program director for Something Wicked Film Festival and Events, and welcome to the podcast. And as I was saying, we're doing something special this month by highlighting several films produced, directed, written, and everything else from the amazing filmmaker that is Roger Corman. And we're doing some of the more well-known ones right now, and Pit and the Pendulum with Vincent Price is one of his most well-known films during the whole Edgar Allan Poe cycle. So we're really happy to be doing this episode for everyone out there, and to join me about talking about this film, we have our amazing Dave Watkins and Thomas Tinnerello, who have loved everything Roger Corman since Roger Corman was born. Probably not, though. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I don't know. I think he just made that part up, but
That's hyperbole. Yeah.
You know what?
It sounded very enthusiastic, though. You could almost believe it, So the laugh at the end, I think.
You know what? I say that because everyone who's listening to this, I hope you know, Roger Corman was like a hit, miss, hit, miss, hit type of filmmaker.
Yeah. And sometimes he'd throw out something and it would make a lot of money, but not necessarily be a hit because it had a lot of exploitation to it.
But thankfully, we're going to be skipping some of those movies. We might get to them 1 year from now or something like that when we do it. I'm hoping we get to focusing on an entire month of episodes on Roger Corman. But right now, we're just kind of honoring his recent passing by going over some of his well-known films. And what better way to do that than with one of the greats in terms of actors, which is Vincent Price. Pit in the Pendulum, is considered one of this. I guess Roger Corman's core Poe cycle is one of the most famous ones, along with Mask of the Red Death, which we've already done, and then there's several others.
Fall of the House of Usher are pretty.
Fall of the House of Usher. That's
the first one. Yeah,
yeah.
This one, unlike some of the other like Roger Corman movies that we're covering, this one he did direct. So,
which is great. So tell me, or tell everyone out there, both of you, a little bit about what was your impression of this film. How about you, Dave? You want to start us off this time?
Yeah, so the first time I saw this, I probably saw it on TV. It's probably on AMC or TCM or something like that. And I really like I like the Edgar Allan Poe type of movies anyway, and I like the the gothic horror sensibilities to it. And Vincent Price was like he's in most of the Edgar Allan Poe movies that were put out by Roger Corman, except for one of them. But he gives a really, and this one really in all of them, he gives a very grand and awesome, quirky performance, and it's a lot of fun. But the one thing with this one, and some of the other ones, they are a little slow burn as they go. There's not a lot of violence in them until near the end. And I think watching it, you're kind of, especially the first time, rewatching it, I had a lot more patience for it and a lot more age than the first time I watched it. But I'm waiting for the Pit and the Pendulum to show up, and it doesn't until like the last 12 minutes. But when it does, it's pretty awesome.
It's funny, Dave, that the violence. It's funny actually when I rewatched Mask of the Red Death, and then thinking back to the other ones I saw, actually this is probably the most violent of all of them, because it's not just the pendulum sequence. Spoilers, folks. Vincent Price Kabangs a bunch of people in the head with a poker a lot in this movie.
I guess when I think of these type of movies too, they kind of remind me of like Hammer horror movies where you get a lot more violence. So if you kind of watch something which has a similar sensibilities, just more violence, I guess, and more nudity or whatever they're going to put in there.
Oh yeah,
this one's very kind of.
On the commentary, Corman said flat out he loves the Hammer movies, and he also claims that he influenced the Hammer movies, which is kind of a little disingenuous of him, I think, to say, because Hammer started doing their horror cycle in 1955.
Well, he kind of said that same shit on the Piranha, which I forgot to mention this when we talked about the Piranha, but he did say that Jaws came out before Piranha, but he influenced Jaws from some other monster movie that he made. So he's like, so kind of I influenced Jaws, so then Jaws influenced Piranha. So I think he's really tongue in cheek when he says stuff like that, though. I think.
He's a showman like Kaufman is from Trauma Films. He's a show. What's his name? Lloyd Kaufman.
Yeah. But you see, I'm kind of taking it with a grain of salt, like he's kind of joking. But at the same time, you might still think, "Hey, I made this monster underwater movie." But when did maybe when he is saying that Hammer maybe kicked into a different type of classical type of gear after he started, because there are a lot of Hammer did kind of follow like Psycho. When Psycho came out, there was like a ton of Hammer movies that were like trying to imitate Psycho that were
Yeah,
not
there was a
period
ton of
pieces.
them that were
Yeah.
thrillers.
And I had a set of them, a set of Hammer movies. I was thinking they're all going to be like Pit and the Pendulum sort of timeline, but there were a lot of them were very contemporary, which were probably in the 70s or late 60s, and just like Psycho, trying to be like Psycho, but not as good. So
Well, yeah, I kind of think of, and this is the difference between when I think about Roger Corman films and when I think about Hammer films. I always thought of Hammer films as gothic horror, and I always thought of Corman films as kind of gothic romance almost.
right,
Because
yeah,
his didn't really have a whole bunch of horror for me. They're like you say, they're a slow burn, and then they have some horror moments towards the end. Like he has to deliver that punch at the end.
but yeah, and then also he does do flashback sequences in this
Mhm.
one that does has violence, but sometimes when you see a flashback sequence, it doesn't have the same kind of punch as something that happens on screen.
Mhm.
But it's a very small cast in this movie, and it works pretty good. It's almost like all of it takes place inside of was it a Spanish castle.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And, but they used the same sets as House of Usher. That's the first one they shot,
Mhm.
and they used the same sets. They just kind of redecorated them and repainted them, and then they got new ones, so they're able to make the house look even bigger. He says with each new one, they're able to make the houses look even bigger than they were the first time. He said in this one, it's a Spanish nobleman, so he would have more money than the one from House of Usher. So that's what made more sense.
I have to ask. I'll have to look it up, or if you guys might know that if the Terror were shot around the same time, because it seems like there's a lot of set pieces
Yeah.
that are the exact same as there was in the Terror.
I bet you it was too. I don't know, but yeah, I bet it was.
I don't know, but I'm almost positive that the matte painting of the castle in this movie is the same castle in literally every single Roger Corman movie. And
That's a map painting. I thought it was a real castle.
no, are you kidding me?
Yeah, I only noticed that in the Terror because I watched Targets for the first time like a month ago, and of course they have all the cutaways to the Terror in there, and I'm remembering all of this now. And I'm like, when I'm watching it, Pit and the Pendulum yesterday, I was like, this all looks familiar to me. Did they use the same stuff in the Terror?
And even they even kind of used the same like setup as the Holocaster. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they said, like in the commentary they talk about how they only had 12 minutes, the last 12 minutes in the movie from Edgar Allan Poe's story, so they had to make up the rest. So they kind of made it like similar to his other stories, which mostly House of Usher, just a little different.
Yeah. Have either of you, speaking of the original story, have either of you actually read the original story?
I did in school.
Yeah,
like they made
a long time
they
ago.
made me read it actually, but I liked it. It was one I didn't mind reading when they made me read it, but.
Yeah, it's really hard to adapt something that's literally just a scene with no character development.
It's been a long time for me, so.
But what I did find interesting about it is, and this is part of the reason I think why this story has endured for so long, it keeps floating to the surface in terms of the shorthand of stories that we associate with Poe. It's right up there with House of Usher and The Raven and Mask of the Red Death, and probably also there's at least one other that you can throw. The Pit the Pendulum always comes to the top because of just the iconography of the murder of the weapon itself, but also it's like when you read the story, it's a whole lot more terrifying than it is in the movie, because in the story, he's in the Spanish Inquisition. Not post Inquisition like this movie is,
right? Yeah.
But you know nothing about this guy. You don't know what he was on trial for or anything. All we know is that he's in this pit. He gets strapped down, but he's got one free arm. His legs and his other hand are bound, but there's a tray of food next to him in the middle of this pit. And for a while, all he can hear is the swishing. And then hours and hours later, then he sees the blade, and he's down in that pit for days.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The blade just comes so incrementally slow. It's not about the terror of getting sliced in half by the crescent blade of the pendulum. It's about the mental torture of the slow incrementation of its coming towards you. It's psychological torture, and it is the weaponization of time itself.
See, they could have drawn that out for at least like 30 minutes, you know. It would have been like a Sergio Leone film, you know, but it could have been effective. It would have been interesting if they did set it during the Spanish Inquisition, though it would have had a lot of different feel. And obviously they didn't want to do that because they didn't have the sets. They had the set ready from the Fall of the House of the Usher, so they just wanted to reuse it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't see any reason why they couldn't have set it during that time and did a more kind of slightly more faithful adaptation. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to see what that looks like, just go out and find Stuart Gordon's remake of Pit The Pendulum with Lance Henriksen as Torquemada. That's a much more faithful adaptation to see what that looks like, and it actually is pretty good. The thing of it is like I think what they wanted, I mean, you look at Mask of the Red Death, and you can see they could have pulled off that time period. That's not an issue. The issue was all they had was that one scene, and to build a prologue leading up to that, but they had no material to work with. So what they decided to do was basically just take the first couple of acts from Fall of the House of Usher and some Poe-flavored stuff and make that up, basically. So that's all they had. That's all they did, and so they kind of they didn't really have choice in the matter of the kind of story that they could tell. If that's what they wanted to do, then that's all they could do, really.
Yeah, and
go ahead, Dave.
There's actually a very interesting deleted scene. Did you see the deleted scene on the?
You mean the prologue?
Yeah. They cut it. Yeah, it actually takes place during that time, I guess, but it was very bizarre.
It is bizarre because like I didn't even know what the heck. I didn't even know that it existed until I saw that DVD set. And those of you out there who are on on Tubi, you probably this is where the physical media collectors have an up on you guys, because I think it's only on that DVD set. Because basically what happened was, and we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but apparently what happened was this movie was finished, but when somebody bought the TV rights, they needed something to pad out the runtime because the movie's too short. So for reasons, those were the reasons. So they basically put out a call to see if they could get anybody back from the movie, and only the girl who plays Catherine, Luana Anders, came back. So they did this thing in a 16th century looking insane asylum with her character trying to get out and convince people that she's not crazy. The story I'm telling you is true. The story I'm telling you is true. True. And that was supposed to be segueing into, you assume the movie is the story she was telling, which if you put that into the movie, it ends up being a much darker story. There's no happy ending for her character, apparently, even though, spoilers, she is the final girl in almost every way. She is the main character of the story. She's the hero. She saves people.
She saves them.
Yeah, so it's like, which is like super progressive for its time. But no, she just ends up in an insane asylum, and I guess people don't believe her. Also, fun fact about that scene: all the extras playing if you look in very carefully, according to IMDb, amongst the extras who are playing mental patients with her, Sid Haig is there.
Okay, yeah. I didn't recognize him. Yeah. He's a lot younger, obviously.
Yeah. But he's there.
There's a lot of people in that scene when she walks into that room, and they're all dressed up, looking very medievalish,
Yeah, there's a dwarf in there. Pulls outfit for reasons.
Right.
I have to look that scene up.
It actually would be, it was actually kind of a cool scene, but it doesn't fit the movie. But it almost reminds me of a Hammer scene.
Yeah.
And it could go into a Hammer movie from there. And it's pretty good acting from her in the sequence, but it definitely is like it does not fit the movie at all.
No, it doesn't. In fact, when I saw it, I completely forgot who her character was because I watched that before I rewatched the movie, and I was trying to figure out who she was, and then I was like, oh, because for a second there I thought that she was Vincent Price's wife because I forgot.
That's who I thought it was.
I
didn't realize she was the other character, but I thought she was the mom or not Barbara Still's character, but his previous wife, or I don't know who the fuck I thought it was, man. But I didn't put it together. I thought it was some other character who was mentioned off screen or something, you know.
Yeah, it was very discombobulating at first.
She looks a lot different in the scene than she does in the rest of the movie.
Well, if they shot it separate from the rest of the movie, she probably got a little bit older and just shot some shit.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was like almost a year after the movie was wrapped.
Right.
Well, that's how a lot of those damn extra scenes for television versions get done. They get done after the fact because no one realizes the original version is too damn short.
I think we should bring back shorter movies. I'm tired of these 2.5-hour freaking, Michael Bay epics. Man, bring back the 90-minute movie.
Yeah. But this was under 90 minutes. But yeah, I mean, sometimes you look at it and you're going to the theater and you're like, really, do I really want to sit through this thing? It's like 2.5, 3 hours. And it gets even worse sometimes. It's like it's over 3 hours. It's like
guys are such cramps.
Put an intermission or something in there, man. I always have to get up and go to the bathroom at some point, you know.
Get up and go.
Well, I do it, then I miss it. I miss the best scene in the movie, you know.
You know what? I used to be like that, but I just get up and go now, even if it is a long movie.
So my origin story with this movie, I think I also saw parts of it on cable, but I don't think I ever saw the whole thing, kind of, sort of, until I bought this other DVD box set of Vincent Price movies, and this one only had 3 movies on it. It had Pit the Pendulum, and I don't think it had Mask of the Red Death. It had what did it have? I don't know what the third movie is, but it definitely had Tales of Terror. That's when I first saw Tales of Terror. But the problem with Pit and the Pendulum is that for whatever reason, the disc was defective. Like, the disc was nice and smooth. There were no blemishes on it. But for whatever reason, right around the time when they're trying to dig up his dead wife, the movie just kind of conks out.
Yeah.
It gets like, and then it kind of skips ahead. So I never really saw the middle third of this movie because of that deadgum disc, which I think I ended up pawning it, basically. So that movie is somebody else's problem now.
Well, maybe it like played better in their player than yours, hopefully.
I've done that plenty of times myself, which is I get a bad disc and then I just sell it to a resell, and I give it to someone else to be their problem.
Yeah. Apparently, Corman said this because of the brevity of the source material. He said that this was the hardest of the Poe pictures to write because they had to invent so much. They didn't have to do that with Fall of the House of Usher, because Fall of the House of Usher has pretty well-defined characters and a good beginning, a middle, and an end. They just had to kind of pad it out a little bit to make a feature film. But before we move on from that, we should probably also mention that with all these Poe movies, he had fantastic screenwriters to collaborate with. With Tomb of Ligeia, he had Robert Towne, who did Chinatown. With Mask of the Red Death, he had Charles Beaumont, of course, who did many classic Twilight Zone episodes. And for this movie, he had the Grand Master of them all. He had Richard Matheson.
Yep.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know out there who Richard Matheson is, let me school you a little bit here.
Just tell him to go out there and read.
You could do that, and you should, because this man wrote books such as The Legend of Hell House, What Dreams May Come, The Incredible Shrinking Man, and I Am Legend. Which, by the way, if you've only seen either movie, if you've only seen the Will Smith version of that movie, please do yourself a favor and read the book I Am Legend. It's not very long. You could probably finish it in an evening.
There's also a Vincent Price version of that movie as well.
Yeah. Last on the Earth and the Omega Man, which I don't really care about the Omega Man as much.
Yeah, it's kind of lame. But yeah, Last Man on Earth is actually, I think, very underrated.
I do too. Vincent Price, again, just chewing scenery like he does. It's great, though.
Yeah, it was also fun in that movie to see Vincent Price as this guy who's completely helpless. You know, he's surrounded by quote unquote vampires. Let's face it, they're zombies. And like no matter what he does, he can't get ahead. No matter what he does.
And the Pit and the Pendulum too, he's also relatively helpless until the end. Which is very interesting. Like right away, he's like almost like crying like a baby over like because his wife's died, and he's just being manipulated by his wife and the doctor who they're out to get him, I guess, to push him over to the edge.
It's so horrible. This poor guy, like he's probably. If you think about it, this is probably one of Vincent Price's most sympathetic characters he's ever played.
Yeah,
like feel so sorry for him. I mean, so for those of y'all who don't know, we can back up a little bit. This movie, like we said, takes place during the 16th century. Actually, 1545 is the year. 1545 is the year given in the narration that was cut from this movie. And starts off, by the way, the opening of this movie is kind of boss, if you agree with me. I couldn't understand why we see like ink swirls, like super colored as your as our opening, and then go to our obsessive lead character on an open carriage with the sea behind him. But according to Roger Corman, the whole idea was to kind of represent graphically the unconscious. That everything is swirling is the unconscious.
He said he kind of got it from Sigmund Freud, which some of the stuff he says is just like what it's
apparently, I mean, ladies and gentlemen, for you young millennials out there don't know, Freud was big back in the 50s and 60s. There's a lot of that going around, a lot of penises, a lot of vagina symbolism.
But it's not. But I mean, he acts like it when Roger Corman's talking about the movie. He acts like it's in there. He's like, you look at the front of the house, and it looks like a woman's body, and the front door's a vagina. And I'm like, no, I don't know if I was really thinking that when I saw the front door, but I guess Roger Corman was.
Yeah, but as you say that though, now that I look at the archway, the Arabic archway, which is what that is for most of the arches in this movie. Yeah, I can kind of see where you might get vagina from that, actually, now that I think about it.
But it shows it all like, 3 or 4 seconds,
Yeah, I know. But like most normal human beings like us aren't thinking about that when we're watching it. But like the one thing that struck me is amazeballs so this guy, I can't remember his name, but he's the brother of Vincent
Barnard.
What, Barnard? Yeah.
Barnard. Yeah. His last name is Barnard.
Barnard, what a jerk. Anyway, this guy... I do not like him, but anyway, he's ostensibly our lead. He's going there to find out what happened. How did his sister die? And he's not getting any straight answers out of any answers that he likes out of Vincent Price. So he decides to investigate himself and be like the detective of the story. Although he doesn't do very much now that I think about it.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't. Which is like you kind of thinking he's going to do something, but he ends up just being there to be the Pit the Pendulum guy,
Yeah, and it's kind of lame how he gets to be that way in a weird way. I kind of wish it was there maybe one more draft of this, because like another thing Roger Corman said was that he trusted Richard Matheson's writing ability so much that a lot of stuff that he went and shot for these movies was like the first draft of the script.
Right. Yeah.
So imagine how much better this movie would have been if they'd done like a couple more drafts, just one more draft. But yeah, so basically this is ostensibly. The structure of this movie is basically just kind of a remake of the setup at the beginning is Fall of the House of Usher, but as it progresses, as we try to figure out what really happened to Catherine, Vincent Price's wife, was she really dead? Why is Vincent Price's character so crazy? What is the trauma that's bugging him? What was the mystery of his father, who was a Grand Inquisitor and has all these torture devices under this castle.
Yeah.
Is his wife still alive as a ghost? What it basically becomes is, again, spoilers, it's basically Gaslight. And also Diabolique.
Yeah.
Which is a very famous. Now that was a film that they did make me watch in college.
Diabolique.
Yeah, they made me watch Diabolique in college.
Wow.
And I remember liking it just because of the wild twist at the climax of that movie. But and it was remade very badly with Sharon Stone years later.
The remake too. I like the remake.
Yeah, I've never actually seen it, but like I couldn't get interested in it.
Yeah.
It's like
You're just assuming it's bad. I never saw it either. I remember it coming out.
Yeah, what little I saw it didn't grab me,
Yeah.
But so he's going to this beautiful matte painting castle, and just the whole time, just kind of trying to find the secret passageways, and just generally be an a-hole to poor Vincent Price, who is basically being tormented.
Yeah.
But the harpsichord music, and like they do so much with sound in this movie. There's so many off-screen sounds and voices that just add so much. And of course, the lightning and the thunder. Boy, golly, do I love a good thunderstorm in a horror movie. I don't know about you guys, folks, but there's nothing that puts me in the mood more than the thunderstorm stuff that starts happening. And it's supposed to be like, it's indicative of the crumbling psyche of Vincent Price's character too, which is pretty rad if you think about it.
Yeah, but keep in mind that when this movie came out, people aren't thinking that Vincent Price is actually innocent. They're thinking that he's the one that's being manipulative because he's Vincent Price, and that's what he does in most of his films. I think that hint of subterfuge is why Barnard, I think it's Barnard, I'm saying it right, Barnard doesn't ever believe him. Like, you don't believe him because the audience doesn't believe Vincent Price. That's a great way of of making a good twist, because you until the twist you're thinking Vincent Price is behind all of this, and then when there's the twist, it's like, holy shit, he's innocent as hell.
But then he is innocent, but then suddenly he's behind all of it at the same time. Out of nowhere,
Yeah, which is tragic.
Yeah.
All this crap happens to him, and he had such a screwed up childhood that it's really made him screwed up in the head.
But the part where they push him to the edge, and they expect him just to go like an invalid and just like or die. They think that he died, but suddenly he snaps and he becomes his father. He becomes his father's persona.
Yeah,
and that scene is like really awesome. Like once he snaps like that.
Yeah. He has one of the best, pencil thin mustache smiles in all of his career at that moment when they're taunting him and kind of trying to stay like, isn't it ironical, isn't it great?
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah.
It's funny. It's like, it's funny when she's taunting him too. And the doctor's like, don't do that. That's probably not the best thing to do. And she's like, no, I gotta do this. I gotta do it.
Well, it also gives Barbara Steele something to actually do in the entire film, because she's only in flashbacks up till then.
Right.
Like you're Barbara Steele, you're just in flashbacks, and they do a great job with the flashbacks, by the way, because there's no dialogue. It's all visual.
It's like a silent movie as well.
It's like a silent. I made that comment when I was rewatching it because I couldn't remember. I didn't realize that before now. I was like, this is like a silent movie. The way that it's filmed, it's got this whole sepia tone where the scenes are like one color and it goes back and forth between the one color. And it's like, this is a silent film.
Yeah,
this is
cool. It's cool though. Yeah.
I thought that was really brilliant.
And you see him play, and he plays his dad too in the flashbacks. So you see the way his dad acts. And when he changes into the way you can see the difference in his performance from this meek man to suddenly this Spanish inquisitor or what
Inquisitor,
yeah, it's a torturer.
But that's the thing is, that's why I think having watched it again recently, because I hadn't seen this one in years. I think when we watched when I commented on Mask of the Red Death, and when we did Piranha and some of the other films that we've talked about, I've always mentioned that I haven't seen them in a while. But when I rewatched this one, I was like, oh, I'm noticing all these other different things that Roger Corman did. To be honest with you, I never gave Roger Corman much credit in his filmmaking style, other than the fact that he was a genius at bringing some really great, talented people together to make some of his movies. But I think this one especially shows some of his capabilities as an actual filmmaker and to craft these really creative stories, despite the fact that it's not one of Richard Matheson's best scripts. There is some elements that Corman still brought out in this film to make it stand above some of the other dreck that he produced.
Yeah, and I think that this movie, when coupled with Mask of the Red Death, shows you that he really was really smart and savvy with the camera and knew how to use it well and knew how to use almost nothing to make something look really expensive. and he knew, I mean, like I said, he's not an artist on the level of like a freaking he's not an artist on the level of a John Ford or even a Werner Herzog, but these movies are worth considering, worth remembering, because they were the first ones to do this corpus of literature on film, the way that set the standard for an entire genre for the rest of the century. This is the standard that people constantly go back to. And I do think it's interesting in the script. It's, like I said, it's maybe not, there's ways they could have improved it. But in a weird way, I think that Corman says that they set out to do, to create some, and the stuff that they did create. They wanted to create something that Poe himself might have liked and felt very Poe. And if you think about it, one thing that I never noticed about Barnard's performance, like I said, he's a jerk. I hate him. But he seems to me, another aspect of his performance, if you look at it, and this is as much a choice of Corman as it is the actor. John Kerr is his name. He doesn't seem really miffed that his sister is dead. He has this almost psychopathic desire to know more. He doesn't seem emotionally broken up by her death. It seems more like it bugs him that he doesn't know why. It bugs the crap out of him that there's something that doesn't make sense. And it's going to drive him crazy if he doesn't figure it out. And he's not going to let anyone or anything get in his way to do it. And what's funny is that's a compelling character. Problem is they don't follow through with that as much as they could have. But that is, you know who that is? That is taking directly from another character in Edgar Allan Poe's stories. That of Detective Augustine Dupont, who really isn't a detective, but he acts as a detective in Murders in the Rue Morgue, which is a story that where Edgar Allan Poe invented the modern detective story. And Augustine Dupont is clearly the inspiration for Sherlock Holmes, who Conan Doyle came out with later. This kind of almost psychopathic human who is smarter than everybody else, thinks the police are complete idiots, and I could solve this case myself. Here, do this, and this. The chimp did it, and that's kind of what this character is. He's the proto Sherlock Holmes, and Poe invented that. And to their credit, Corman and Matheson were smart enough to realize that and stick that in this story in a way to try to make it fit.
Yeah.
I also get the that John Kerr, even though they don't mention this in the script, in the commentary, that you know how in Fall of the House of Usher, I don't remember what his name was, but the lead actor in that was one of those quote new method actors, and he's terrible in the movie, by the way. But anyway, him and Vincent Price did not get along at all. I wonder. I'm getting similar vibes from John Kerr in this movie. I get a feeling he probably was also a method actor, and I get a feeling he wasn't thrilled to be working on this costume drama.
Oh, wait, you know, it's too. I'm thinking about that, and these guys they're acting with Vincent Price, who gets to kind of do this grand like performance and kind of go a little over the top with it when they got to stay under the top or the best they can. and so they don't get to have fun with it as much. Especially in this one, he's got to be very, very I'm looking for my sister. Where's my sister? Who killed her? Kind of talking like that, like a lot. So he has to kind of be very straightforward.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good observation about just the detachment and trying to figure out why she's there, because you definitely don't see it in nothing. Like, there's not, like, it makes him unlikable, like you're saying. But I've never hated him as much as you guys claim to hate him. But I mean, but he definitely doesn't come off as a likable character. But I was kind of the whole time I'm kind of hoping that as the movie goes on, that's going to kind of change. Like, you see a different side of him, but you never do.
Yeah.
He kind of just stays in that very narrow, straightforward like line. But there is a part right before, right before he gets hit and knocked into the thing, where you kind of see maybe he's starting to think Vincent Price is okay. I think, yeah. But then everything changes. But
I think what's missing in the film is with that his character doesn't have, like, you're almost expecting his character to have some type of romantic thing with the sister, and that never happens. And so
right.
it kind of throws you off, because that character doesn't have a change. Then there's no reason for him to change. He's just going to say, I'm here to find out what happened to my sister. I don't believe you. What you're saying doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And that's how he is the whole movie. And to that moment that you mentioned, where it's like, well, maybe Vincent Price is genuine. Maybe he is suffering from something.
And he apologizes to his sister. And it's a lovely little kind of not candlelit, but like fireside moment, like in the night before. And like, honestly, like I felt some kind of connection between those two, especially the way he kissed her hand. And I think you're right. If this movie were made today, this is where the gratuitous sex scene would come in, especially if Corman made it today. This is where they would just break down and get hot and heavy in front of that fire.
So something like about him not caring about his sister dying. It's also funny when Vincent Price's character gets killed after he flips, and the sister doesn't seem to give a shit that much about him dying either. And she goes, she says, it's all over now. We can get out of here. She says something of that nature.
It's all over now. Stay closed forever. Yeah. I was like, well, you know that your brother's down there. You don't want to bury him in the family crypt or anything. You're just
Well, that's another thing. Is like there's this conceit of we always, like in House of Usher and in this movie and in The Raven too. There is this conceit of, we always inter them in the crypt under our castle. And Peter Lorre was like, of course, where else in The Raven?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I guess she figured, well, it's more efficient to just leave them down there. I mean, they're already down here. Might as well just gotta leave them there. I don't know. I always felt that, again, if one more draft. Because
they had to do that for the last twist of the white meat inside the Iron Maiden. But that's the whole reason why that happened. But at the same time, but even like, it's just like it's just weird the way it's not set up for her not to care that much about her brother. But it does seem like all of a sudden she doesn't care about him because he flipped and became like a psychopath all of a sudden. So she's like, okay, it's okay for him to die, and I don't care about him anymore. But still,
But it is a nice twist to see what happens to Barbara Steele's character. As much as I love Barbara Steele, and we've mentioned Barbara Steele before for Poe's films and Baba's films, it's really nice to see her come up at the very end.
We should probably back up a little bit too to tell people, who are just joining us, who Barbara Steele is and how interesting it is that she gets the billing in this movie that she does.
Yeah.
Because if you watch the credits, she's like second billed. And
well, she's third billed, actually.
Third billed, right, behind Vincent Price and John Kerr, right. But getting that high,
it's a high billing, though. Yeah.
Getting that high of billing would lead you to believe that she has many more lines in this movie. She does not. But which was funny because at the time she was a pretty big star, and especially in Europe, which is why she got that high of billing, because they wanted to, make a whole lot of money in Europe, where Barbara Steele was really, really big. Also, but like, you don't really see very much of her because she's dead at the beginning of the movie. You see her, but don't hear her speak in the flashbacks that are colored, and then you finally hear her voice in that really, really chilling. I think the scariest part of this movie is not the Pit the Pendulum moment, although that's amazing, and we'll talk about that in depth later. But to me, the scariest moment is when he hears her voice calling Nicholas, Nicholas, and follows it all the way down to her crypt that they've already opened in a shock scene before and cracked it open, and bang, there's a corpse in there going, a corpse with a frozen face of horror.
Yeah, it's a very good corpse, by the way.
Yeah, it's freaking terrifying. Which, by the way, apparently nobody thinks that while we were watching the movie. Well, if spoilers, she's not really dead. Whose body is that? It's his mother. So Price is looking at his mother's corpse at that moment and thinking it's his wife's corpse.
I guess with the doctor it up to make it look like she died, like alive. I mean, she was still alive inside of it or something.
Yeah, I think he probably would have done that. Also, he probably put some kind of marble eyeball in there.
Yeah.
Still there.
But how long do you think the sister's supposed to have been dead at this point? Because that corpse looks really old,
5 months?
I do know. I do not know. I thought about that myself when I was watching that movie. I'm like, okay. So...
Well, they mentioned it. They mentioned it when she died. When they revealed to the brother exactly at the very beginning. I think it was 5 months. And he was arguing why he wasn't told sooner than that. 5 or 6 months.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, 5 months. Okay, you've answered my question then. So now, this is where my logical brain messes things up. Okay, so because as I was rewatching this for the commentary, I thought to myself, knowing what I know, it's fresh in my mind, and looking at the flashback sequences, I thought to myself, dang, this whole ruse that Barbara Steele's Catherine, was it Catherine? Yeah,
it's Catherine.
Yeah, this whole freaking ruse she comes up with, she commits to the bit. She really, because like what Vincent Price tells everybody is that, at first everything was delightful, and then she started acting strangely. She wouldn't eat. She was losing weight. She was saying that she was, feeling weird because the castle was influencing her. And then weeks go by that she's down in the basement, down in the dungeon, kind of playing with his dad's old torture devices. And then she pretends to be dead and says, Sebastian, as she, quote, dies. And that's, of course, the name of Vincent Price's evil dad. But that makes me realize, okay, so she starved herself, pretended to be crazy, pretended to be dead, and then hid in this castle in the bowels for 5 months. I'm assuming the only way she didn't starve to death is that either
the doctor came by once every 5 weeks.
It's a very, very elaborate thing, and it requires a lot of patience. And then right at the end, when everything is going to work, she loses her patience. Her brother shows up and it kind of almost ruins the whole thing. And he's going to leave the next day, and she can't wait for him to leave. Even though she has like 5 months of patience, but she can't wait another day.
Oh, actually, you know what? Believe it or not, to me, that's the most believable aspect of that whole thing. Because honestly, if I were her, I probably couldn't wait one more day either. That castle is dank. But that makes sense to me. Because, okay, so this whole ruse then, like we said, it's basically gaslight. It's basically diabolique. It's basically them. Catherine was having an affair with this doctor, and the first time anyone saw this, did anyone see that coming a mile away?
Oh, I know.
Yeah, that was a surprise to you because I saw.
Knowing Vincent Price's previous films, I always thought he was lying the whole time, so I never saw this one. I never saw the twist coming.
I can't remember this time when I rewatched it, I definitely saw it coming.
Yeah. So this whole thing is just a scam for them to drive him insane, and I guess run off together and collect his inheritance? ?
There's no reason. There's no plot reason. Like, it's not like she wouldn't get the money anyways if she had killed him, because it's a whole elaborate, really crazy ruse just so you can get someone in a pendulum in a pit somewhere for visual.
Well, I think she's probably very Catholic and didn't want to murder him. She's fine with being an adulteress, but not with being a murderer. There's a fine line to draw. So maybe that was her thought process behind, let's make him crazy, think I'm a ghost, and then we'll do that. But by the way, ladies and gentlemen, let's go back for a second. Again, I still say You don't know any of this until the end of the movie, because for all you know, she is a freaking ghost. And unfortunately, we do this kind of Scooby Doo thing where Raggy, is that really? But
Right. And that, I mean, that's kind of why it works and why you don't think about it as much, because it is a twist and it's not like it like just keep, and that's the thing. It's not explained that well. And it's also the sister being there is a problem. She's there the whole time. I don't know how long she's been there, but they got basically make her not catch on to the ruse and try to make him crazy at the same time.
yeah. So really, it's very impressive that they pulled this off, if you think about it.
Yeah.
Especially when, and again, this is the scariest moment of the freaking movie because you don't know any of this yet. And the way that Corman pulls it off, it's basically the same kind of, risen from the grave reveal that was in Fall of the House of Usher, but it's 10 times scarier. It's a million times scarier because the build up to it, Nicholas, that build up, that long build up of Vincent Price just slowly going nuts, going, Elizabeth, Elizabeth. Sorry, her name's not Catherine, it's Elizabeth. Elizabeth, where are you? And he's just like sneaking around corners, getting his head caught in cobwebs and not even caring about the cobwebs. And we get to her tomb. And by the way, like one of her Nicholases just comes really abrupt. Like, Nicholas. That one scared the crap out of me because I had nodded off for a little bit. And then all of a sudden, like, what the frick? Oh. And then we see her tomb. And then spoilers, folks. He's already cracked open the door. And we were like, what are we going to see? Are we going to see the skeleton dead body we saw earlier come to life? I don't know if I want to see that. But then it opens it up, and it's just her body. It's her as a woman, but her face is completely in shadow. And she sits up, and the music, by the way, the music in this movie is atypical for its time. It's not the big orchestral Baroque kind of, pre-John Williams-esque kind of thing that the House of Usher was. It's very atonal, very kind of reminiscent of the Planet of the Apes score back in the same time. So it's much scarier to modern audiences, I think, than if they'd done it typically. So it's so scary, like when she gets up there and comes towards him and follows him, and then finally her face is revealed, and it's just like he falls down the stairs and just completely snaps and laughs at her, and then she laughs right back at him, and it's so disturbing.
On the commentary, Roger Corman, another one of his Sigmund Freud things, when he's going down the hallway, he relates that to that's going into like a woman's vagina, and then we reach the end, and then suddenly the vagina turns on you. You know what I'm saying? So
that's crazy.
Yeah, that's why it's like it's so funny when he's talking about stuff like that. I'm like, okay, I don't know. I've never really thought of it that way, and I don't think most people probably do. But he says it's definitely there, but I don't know.
Yeah, no.
Sometimes I think Roger Corman probably should not make commentaries of his own films.
Yeah.
I don't know. There is another commentary on the disc with these two historians that is much more fuller and does dive in a lot more. That's also why they read like segments of the script that are cut out and descriptions and stuff that really shed light on the movie. So like, I highly recommend checking that one out too. Yeah, it's.
I think I listed about half of it, but I kind of ran out of time on it. But, I listened to Roger Corman all the way through, but then, yeah. I kind of spot when I went through the movie to the more important scenes with that and listened to the historian's point of view on it, But
yeah,
which was the Pit the Pendulum scene, pretty much.
Yeah, well, we could go ahead and talk about that sequence because that is the single most important thing in this whole thing. Oh, by the way, wait, before we move on from that, we were just talking about the scene where Price snaps.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes catatonic for a second, and that's when the twist happens where the doctor comes in, and his best friend, the doctor, he can trust. But he comes in and he's like, "What did you do? I thought you said you would wait. Like I couldn't wait any longer." Which, by the way, I found out that that's not Barbara Steele's voice. That is somebody else who does. Yeah. Because she's way too British, apparently. And then they hug and they embrace and they make out in front of him. And as they're doing that, I thought to myself, "Oh boy, I had this thought, and I thought to myself, Roger Corman at one point during the commentary, I think during the flashback scene, talked about how like she's pretending, how like diabolical it is that she's pretending to like all of the torture ecumens and getting obsessed with his Dominic Medina's his father, the torturer. But then she's like, well, but she is sadistic herself. This movie is about sadism in one form or another, whether it's psychological or physical or, emotional. And then I realized, if this were made today, they would just during that scene where they're making out in front of him, I think that they would just go full hard and basically saying that Elizabeth.
Barbara Steele's Elizabeth, Catherine's the sister.
Yes, you're right. Elizabeth is as a sadist herself and probably really did like the torture equipments, and probably they would go into a BDSM kind of scene between, because like what do they do? I'm sure like maybe she drags the doctor down in the torture room and has some kinky like stuff with the torture devices, if you know what I mean, and I think you do.
Well,
we need.
I think that we might be out of that sort of thing now. I think that maybe a few years ago. I think now they're kind of playing it a little less of that sort of thing. But I think the whole thing's kind of like. I mean, when that sort of thing happens, it's just like it's always like he's still alive and he's maybe gone crazy, but why do you want to provoke him? It might be best just to not shut the fuck up and get the fuck out of there,
Pretty much.
Oh yeah, but that's just the thing. It's a Baroque Gothic romance mystery, and that is the sort of thing that a Baroque Gothic character would do, and also a sadistic Goth Baroque person would probably do. Again, this is torture. She's torturing him, and it fires her in a major way.
Yeah. Which is very, very much of watching a Barbara Steele character. That's something you're expecting. You're not expecting what the flashback shows you, which is her being a dutiful wife and slowly being turned crazy by the castle and all that type of stuff, and then she dies. No. That's not what you're used to seeing a Barbara Steele in. You're used to seeing her being like the instrument of destruction, and that is exactly what you get with the twists, so to speak.
I guess then the question we have to ask, Kevin, since you're a bit more well versed in her career than I think either of us are. I mean, I can't speak for Watkins, obviously. Like, what modern actress would be the equivalent of her in you think, like, just to give people a reference?
Modern actress that would be like her. Jeez, that'd be kind of hard because those type of roles aren't given to women on a constant basis like they were back then. I mean, you think about it, that those type of roles, those darker roles like that, just aren't done anymore. I mean, you may have been able to get, you may have seen like mid Angelina Jolie, because of her look, and her edginess.
I think it's very unique to that time period because
I think so.
She was like she apparently was known as an Italian scream queen for those type of Italian horror movies that were being made at the time.
Yeah, but she was both the bad guy and good guy in some of these films, and it was it was very odd because sometimes I think some of the films she was also the killer in, and she did a lot of roles.
Right. What I'm just saying, it's not like right now. It's not that type of. You're not seeing like I guess that type of like you're not making those type of movies as much now, like the Italian horror movies.
Not anymore. I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find someone who embodies that type of character so effortlessly and proficiently as she was in this day and age. I think because of the way that our culture is now, those type of roles are not being written anymore at all. I don't think it's just something that was part of the 70s, to be honest with you. I mean, in the 80s, it became complete scream queen. In the 60s and 70s, when she was coming up in these type of films, I think there was a lot more range, to be honest with you, for her do all these. And she went to multiple different countries. She was like Christopher Lee. Christopher Lee did movies in so many different countries. And Barbara Steele was probably his opposite, his female opposite, who did the same thing. She was in tons of movies in tons of different countries. And unfortunately, she was dubbed in most of those. I mean, for a while there, she spoke about she wished she can go back and redub all these movies with her own voice, but with the exception of like the Mario Bava films and these type of films, most of her other films are kind of forgotten. The Silent Scream, some of the other ones, people don't really remember those as much because she's crazy in the Silent Scream as well.
It seems to me, I mean, it makes sense. Like this movie, if you think about it, the women of this movie drive the plot forward. I mean, even though Barnard comes in and gets things started, if you think about it, Catherine really kind of tempers him. Catherine saves him, and if you
the other guy really comes in because she can't pull the lever, and they have the other guy, the servant guy, has to come in there and finish that. But
but it was her idea. She heard the scream.
Yeah,
she started.
She's trying to pull the lever,
Maximilian's just a tool. It's really all her. And also on the flip side of that, you have Elizabeth. The whole movie's really about her and her effect on Vincent Price. And before that, it's about what happened to Vincent Price's mother and the psychological effect that had on him. Again, this is very Freudian, but but if you think about it, the women of this movie kind of drive the plot in many ways, and that's super progressive for its time. This is 1961, folks. The Beatles haven't made it over here to America yet, I don't think.
They haven't. I don't know when they made their way over here. I became a Beatles fan much later in my life.
I think it was 64, 65, because I remember on our Mask of the Red Death podcast, we talked about how Paul McCartney visited the set of Mask of the Red Death. And Roger Corman had no idea who he was.
So, okay, all right.
So, yeah, the Pit and the Pendulum itself, which is just a big set with a tall ceiling and a magnificent matte painting, which still holds up, I would say.
Yeah,
it looks
that
good.
take a matte painting.
Yeah.
But it opens like Price has gone totally insane and has turned himself into his father, the Inquisitor, and in a hilarious way, the Doctor just runs off a cliff into the pit and dies.
Also, he has this like wardrobe of his father's wardrobe that makes him, I don't know where he gets it from, but it looks really awesome when he has it on. It's in
it does.
And it looks really well kept too, don't you?
Yeah.
It's
He's
not
been saving it.
At all.
Yeah. It's
which
moms haven't gotten to it, despite the fact it's been sitting in a pit for God knows how many years.
Yeah, and also
decades.
It makes me think back to that first scene where we get the hint of the pit when Barnard's bursting in saying, what is going on here? What's that weird sound? And he's going down and he's about to go to the door, and all of a sudden, bam! Vincent Price's head pops up. Like, what? And he's like, that's nothing. It's nothing. It's a machine that has a delicate apparatus that must be kept under constant repair. And
I mean, it kind of implies that he knew about the wardrobe. Maybe he's been taking care of it in a way,
Maybe, he's been taking care of it, just like he's been taking care of the Pit and the Pendulum itself. Which, if he hates his dad so freaking much, why is he taking care of the torture devices? Why is he keeping them in moderate repair, or in the case of the Pendulum, in constant repair? Well, I think it is because, like Gorman said, for whatever reason, that his father is still in his psyche, is deep down in his psyche, is still there as some Jekyll and Hyde sort of character. Granted, we don't see any other hint of that in the movie. It would have been helpful to have some of that in the second act, or sprinkle it a little bit, more. Be a little bit more of a gradual, Jack Nicholson in The Shining type decline. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But
some people kind of claim that Jack Nicholson was like batshit crazy from the top, but like when they're driving in the car and he's like, "Yeah, you see, the kids saw it on TV." He sounds a little crazy when he says that. But
yeah. I mean, I mean, still though, there's a
Yeah,
long.
he gets a lot more crazy as the movie goes on, but
Yeah,
He's
but
just
yeah, you see what I mean there. There's
yeah,
yeah, there's this guy was inside him the whole time,
yeah.
and now he's finally able to run free. And poor John Courage happens to be running around going, Miss Medina, what are you? And he's like, oh, there you are, Bartolome. Now you are Bartolome, my uncle, or in this case, my brother. So, and it's like, he looks nothing like the Doctor. Okay, fine. Which, by the way, to me, like, on the commentary, it said that Roger Corman was like, the guy playing the Doctor was like looks like a cross between like Al Pacino and Humphrey Bogart. To me, I get more Paul Simon vibes from his face. But anyway, I don't know why.
yeah.
But like, so he just straps him to the table, and he has this wonderful monologue, this classic Vincent Price monologue about how the pit is hell, Gehenna, the place of your torment. It is, you're surrounded, and such is the state of mankind. You are surrounded by hell, and above you, the blade of fate, inexorably, slowly coming towards you. And which, of course, all of that is just classic Matheson dialogue. And that's one of the highlights of this movie, because Price was super good at delivering dread-inducing monologues like that. So I always get it.
He was just good at doing dialogue or chewing scenery and delivering dialogue. He's like Christopher Lee, in my opinion, of the Hammer films, always just chewing scenery and delivering dialogue.
Yeah. Although, as much as I love Christopher Lee, I feel like Vincent Price has the edge on him a little bit for only one reason. I feel like Price had a little bit more range than Christopher Lee did. I feel like there was always an edge of sinisterness to Christopher Lee, even if he's playing the bad guy. I mean, sorry, even if he's playing the good guy, he kind of feels like he's the bad guy. But there were, because his voice is like this all the time, no matter how tender he wants to be to his lover. But Vincent Price, on the other hand, was able to pitch himself and his performance and his voice where he could be genuinely romantic and affectionate. You could almost believe that there's good in him. I feel like and this performance is case in point. This is one of the few times where he gets to be the victim and the villain.
I think Vincent Price, he could play comedy a lot better.
Oh yeah,
I like Christopher Lee a lot, but he could be comedic, and he does have humor in this movie too. There is a little bit of humor in this in general, but with all of his performances, he adds a little bit to it, which and he has both of them have very like strong presences when you see them on screen, especially in comparison to everybody else in the movie. They just stick out. No one can even try to like do anything when they're in the scene. They might as well just let him do what he's going to do. So.
Nobody can quite, especially at that time, nobody could quite rise up to their level, which is one of the things that always bugged me a little bit about the Vincent Price movies, especially with Corman, is that try as they might, those poor actors all around Price just cannot rise to the same level that he's on.
It'd be cool if they threw somebody else in there, like with a, that's I guess more recognizable, like they do later on when he's acting with Peter Cushing or even like Christopher Lee or Donald Sutherland or whatever.
But sadly, by the time they were doing those films, the scripts just weren't as good as they were at this point.
Yeah,
maybe the only exception would be like Comedy of Terrors, which is not a horror movie. It's just a very fun farce.
Right.
But, it's not on the same level, but it is, for what it is, it's really good. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Comedy of Terrors. But, what's so cool about this scene is the art direction, the editing, the fact that when you see that pendulum blade start to move, Corman took out every other frame so that it has this weird staccato slow motion going on.
Yeah.
And it looks spectral almost, the way that it's moving. And I love how Vincent Price kind of holds on to the chains and he sways with the pendulum while it's swaying, which I thought was very childlike and delightful. And apparently, like, that whole sequence, Roger Corman was running out of time, so he did like 40 setups in 2 hours.
Right. And then he shot a bunch
like
of B-roll of the room just to make it cut together better, which he starts
Yeah.
finding different things on the wall and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, I mean, in the original short story, there are murals on the wall of the pit, but they are generally of like devils and skeletons, and actually, I think the pendulum itself is being held by a mural of the god Kronos, which makes perfect sense if you realize that the Titan Kronos represents time, among other things. But yeah, so but in this movie, like he interprets the set designer interpreted demons as these demonic hooded figures. It always scared the crap out of me when I was younger.
It looks good. Yeah, it looks cool. I guess I think they had to do that like real quick too, didn't they? When they're doing that set. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, but it's so like he keeps cutting back to them, distorting them, putting the same color filters we see on the flashbacks,
Right.
and music is very good. It's percussive and atonal, and it just feels like a bit of a nightmare. And also, the fear on John Kerr's face is very real. He was petrified of that thing looming over him like the sword of Damocles. So much.
It made that seem very effective, especially considering for the first like 2/3 of the movie, he's like this really stoic character.
Yeah, and now
apparently he was really scared of it, and Roger Corman laid down there for a minute to show him, and Roger Corman was like, "Yeah, it was pretty scary, actually."
Are you serious? Oh my god!
Yeah, he's like, "It's no big deal. I'm going to lay down there. I'll show you how it's done," sort of thing.
Oh yeah, I mean, it did the job. It got John Kerr to sit down and do it. But yeah, I mean, they did it with like a combination of a dummy strapped to the thing, like when the blade actually cuts, that's a dummy. But in some of the wider shots, it is John Kerr. But the thing of it is like I could see why he was scared, because even though it's not a real blade, it is wood and it's rubber.
I mean, it'll kill you, or
but yeah,
maim
oh
you.
Yeah. If anything went wrong, if that thing snapped, it would crush you in half at least. It may not crush you, but it could kill you. So yeah, I understand. It's terrifying, and there's something weird about the crescent blade itself. I don't know what it is, but I feel like maybe it's part of the fact that it's swaying, and the fact that it is incrementally the like I said before, the weaponization of time. This and part of it is this movie being so popular, but that image has been just done so many times in so many different ways. There's so many different versions of that blade, and it's described very weirdly in the story too. I've even seen versions of it that take the description a little too literally, and actually have it literally be a scimitar blade, like a scimitar sword mounted on a stick, which is no, but okay, fine, I guess. That looks really stupid, but okay. But yeah, that's what it's supposed to. That double-sided blade with a thing going to the top has been done so many different ways. I think I even saw it in DuckTales. I think DuckTales did a Pit and the Pendulum homage, but like everybody knows and no matter what, I mean, yeah, you can do it. You can make that blade look kind of stupid, but I've seen there's so many different ways. Like there's one where it looks more like an anvil. There's another one I saw where it's just like this cool kind of. I think Stuart Gordon's version did like a kind of a double bladed sort of thing where there's a small little crescent and then a bigger crescent on top of it. I thought that was super cool. But yeah, like through the years, you can see all these different versions of that most iconic torture device. There's something psychological about it that I don't know exactly why, but it stays in your brain.
Yeah, I think really, I think this is probably, as far as the shape of the pendulum, it's probably the best way for it to look, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But I think if you try to get too crazy with it, I guess they just don't want it to look. They want it to do something different or something. But I like the way it looks here.
Well, yeah.
I don't remember. It's been a while since I've seen the other one, the Stuart Gordon version. But
it's been a while. Yeah, same.
I think they do the same thing as like the Pit and the Pendulum part doesn't happen until the very end of the movie in that one too, right?
Yeah, that's right. They do. Although with the Stuart Gordon version, we can talk about that a little bit. That there's so much more stuff going on in the
Right.
Stuart Gordon version that you don't really mind that to wait that long. Like
Yeah.
Stuart Gordon's version, actually, I think is much more relevant today than it was back then. Because if you think about it, Stuart Gordon's version is basically all about cancel culture. The beginning of this movie shows the Inquisition putting a dead body on trial and basically cancels him for heresy. And in effect, and by canceling him, I mean they shut down his assets, they take away his land, his everything. His family has no home anymore. They are just out on the streets. They are destitute. They have nothing because your dad was a heretic 50 years ago. We're canceling him for something he did 50 years ago. He's been dead for years, but we're going to take it down now. So it's like, wow, that's wild. I didn't expect to see that in a movie made in the mid-90s.
Right.
Much less by Charles Band.
Right. Yeah, it's one of the better movies from Full Moon for sure. It's been a long time since I've seen
Full
it.
Moon did a lot of great movies.
I don't know. But I think it's more of the, I don't know.
Drunken Heads, Graveyard Dolls.
Well, like the Puppet Master movies, but I don't know.
The Subspecies movies are amazing.
Oh my God. All right. So
I watched those again not too long ago. It was like I was like, maybe they're better than I remember them. No, they're actually worse than I remembered,
Some of them are worse, some of them are worse.
Yeah.
I mean, Subspecies 4 is garbage. I'll grant you, Subspecies 4 is garbage, but the other movies are great. I'm telling you.
Well, now you can watch the new ones since they just put a new one out. So
it's got the same dude in it too, isn't it?
Yeah,
I saw
Anders Hobb or something like that.
I have not seen it yet.
Yeah.
But if you've been following my reviews, I've seen all the crappy what was it? The Demonic Toys sequels that they've done and the Splinter movies for the Puppet Master crap. I
like that one with Demonic Toys versus Puppet Master with Corey Feldman in it, and that one's pretty entertaining. Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah, it was pretty entertaining. It takes place at Christmas too, so it's a Christmas horror movie,
Oh my God. All right, so guys, we are at the end of our Pit and the Pendulum because we've gotten off of some crazy tangents with this one. And especially for anyone who has never seen this film, we have actually gone through and deciphered the entire thing for you, so you may not need to watch it. But I'm going to say you should go out there and watch it because it is one of Roger Corman's better films with some very strong performances. But any final words from you two about the Pit and the Pendulum? How about you, Thomas?
Well, so I think it's interesting to note that two of the lead actors in this movie went on to different careers. John Kerr eventually quit acting and became a doctor.
Oh, well, I just looked that up. That's what Roger Corman says, but he looks like he became an attorney. I think Roger Corman was mistaken on that.
Well, he might not be. You know what? Because I have a roommate.
He knows John Kerr.
We have a roommate. No, we have a roommate who was a lawyer, and he got a doctorate in law. So he keeps telling us, "I am the doctor."
Yeah. Okay. But I mean,
he's not a medical doctor.
Does he think he's like Doctor Who or something? Or is it?
Yeah. He's a huge Doctor Who nut. Yeah. But he keeps saying doctor because he has a doctorate in law.
Okay.
So yeah. I think Corman probably was not mistaken in that regard. But I'm going to say that he was kind of mistaken when he said on the commentary that Luana Anders kind of became a successful screenwriter. So I was like, oh, that's cool. Let's see what she did. Because, women screenwriters weren't that very, prevalent back in those days. I would love to hear a success story about that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I looked it up. Luana, maybe she sold a lot of unproduced screenplays, but the three that are credited to her on IMDb are, and I quote, she did some additional dialogue work on Francis Ford Coppola's One for the Heart, which Francis Ford Coppola, she did a lot of stuff for him, like she was in Dementia 13. She also wrote a movie called Limit Up, which is basically like a Deal with the Devil movie starring Nancy Allen and Ray Charles.
Okay,
super interesting. then I think probably the pinnacle of her career is this thing called Fire on the Amazon, which has gone down in history as the movie you track down if you want to see Sandra Bullock naked. And that's it. That's all she wrote, quite literally.
But yeah, does she
So-
like does some other writing for something else other than movies, or is it?
That's it. That's all that's
Okay.
listed.
Right.
Now, I mean, she didn't quit acting. She acted pretty regularly until she died in 1995. She went on to star with fellow Roger Corman Discovery's Jack Nicholson in Easy Rider and The Last Detail, and she went on to star with another Roger Corman Discovery, Dennis Hopper, in Night Tide, and of course Easy Rider. So
Great movie.
yeah, so it's not like she wasn't prolific as an actress. She certainly did quite a few interesting stuff. So yeah, I did. Maybe Roger wasn't.
Yeah,
but
I think Roger Corman's commentaries are kind of taken with a grain of salt. He's definitely maybe he doesn't remember stuff quite as well, and because he's in his commentaries.
He's a showman.
Yeah,
He's he has stories to tell, and
right.
stories.
He
Famous.
kind of seems like the type of person that would tell a story and tell it different every time he tells it.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what's sad. Is like we're gonna miss those stories. We're gonna them, but I guess we can't be too selfish. I mean, come on, the guy was 98.
Yeah,
I mean,
I know.
That's a long time to live on this earth. But
and still fucking produced stuff up until he died. So that's pretty good.
And clearly he worked with like a ton of people and knew a ton of people. So it's hard to kind of keep track of people, even if you think that somebody was a doctor or a lawyer. It's like similar, like say doctorate.
Yeah. And I would say that Samuel Arkoff is credited as saying that this was his favorite of the Poe movies that he had produced, executive produced, I should say, because he said it was the scariest. And honestly, I need to rewatch Tomb of Lygia and some of the other ones, but honestly, right now, as it stands right now, I'm going to agree with him.
Yeah, I watched Tomb of Lygia recently. It's very similar, actually. That's the thing, is like a lot of them are very similar.
Yeah.
And I think I like The House of Usher better, but it's I don't know. It's like number one on a lot of people's list of the 8 Poe films that they did.
Oh yeah, I mean, I like House of Usher, but the problem with House of Usher is that there were budgetary constraints that I think harmed that movie. Not the least is the fact that it's way too well lit. It's not nearly atmospherically lit as this movie is.
Yeah,
it could be part of why it is the way it is, though. I think, I have to rewatch it because it's been a while.
Yeah, it's been like several years for me too, but I like it's interesting that his hair's blonde in it. It's like when I was like kind of like taken aback because I'd seen it a long time ago. When I saw it again this time, I was like not expecting his hair to be blonde when he came in. But
he doesn't have his signature mustache.
Right.
A little diminished when he doesn't have that epic level pencil thin mustache that kind of is part of the iconography of Vincent Price. In fact, I rated this movie. Sorry, I didn't rate this movie. I'll tell you what I rate this movie. But I rated Mask of the Red Death 3.5 Vincent Price mustaches out of 5. For this movie, I think I'm not going to be a smart aleck. I'm not gonna Schwarzenegger this, and I'm not gonna create I tried very hard to figure out what sort of weird object I could define this movie by. I could have used the little red her little red ring. I could have done the poker.
Which you got to do the pendulum. The pendulum's what you got.
Yeah, that's what it was. I can't get away. Daggum pendulum.
Yeah.
So my final rating for this movie, 4 pendulums out of 5.
4. Okay. All right. Any final thoughts for you, Dave?
Well, I just go this is a set dressing thing in comparison to House of Usher. And what Roger Corman was talking about in between, like this one, he went with more realistic paintings on the walls. In the House of Usher, he had more surrealistic looking abstract stuff that he said he regretted doing. But I think it looks better when it looks more real. I think he said he liked it because it makes it look like you're not in reality when you see the abstract paintings on the wall over the place. But
Huh?
I do, I don't know. I think to me it looks better when they're not like real funky looking like they do in House of Usher.
Mm. Okay.
Yeah,
And
I kind of agree with him on that, except that I really freaking love the paintings of Fall of the House of Usher. But I do think they would have been slightly out of place in this movie. Um, and also I learned because of the box set on there, which I think includes Fall of the House of Usher. There's like a whole thing about the paintings in that movie. When maybe we'll save that for the time when we talk about Fall of the House of Usher. But apparently, those paintings were painted by an occultist
oh wow, yeah.
who died under, shall we say, mysterious circumstances. And to this day, nobody knows where those paintings are. They were stolen.
Oh,
Maybe
gee.
take it. That's really weird. But as
Yeah.
far as like with my rating on this, I would also rate it 4 pendulums out of 5. You know, if there
Okay.
was a half, maybe I'd add a half to it, but it is. But it was,
All right. So, well, getting to me now that you guys have wrapped up your words on Pit and the Pendulum, I think for performance wise, you know me, I'm a huge fan of Barbara Steele, but for me and Vincent Price, who I don't typically gravitate towards Vincent Price films. I watched a lot of them as a kid. I've watched some of them as a grown up, but he's never struck me as someone I need to go out there and watch, like a Peter Cushing or not Boris Karloff. I also like Bela Lugosi, but Boris Karloff and Peter Cushing, I strive to see all their movies. Vincent Price has never been that kind of actor for me. I just happen to see him. If I see him, if I don't, I never will. But I do love the fact that his performance in this one is what drives my like of this film. He's very genuine the first 2/3, and then he has this really great twist where he gets to change his character, his performance, and everything completely around to something that we are familiar with. But watching him for the first 2/3 is a joy to me because I'm so used to him being like the abominable Dr. Phibes. So that's that's what I'm used to him being. So I'm gonna rate this just a solid 4 slashes of the pendulum. For that reason only. And I hope that our conversation will have people going out there searching not just out Roger Corman's produced and directed films, but also Vincent Price. Vincent Price is by far one of the most influential actors in the film arts. He's I mean, even though he passed away a really, really long time ago, his films have struck a chord with not only the generation that grew up with him, but people even today in the later generations who continue to watch his films. And these Poe films are some of the most well-known. I guarantee you there are students out there who, when someone tells them what they know about Edgar Allan Poe, it's going to be one of these freaking movies. It will be the first thing that they think of. And with that, I think Roger Corman has created something that's timeless for the film arts. He's created these Poe films, whereas most of his other films will be completely forgotten. I think these Poe films will be some of the most well-remembered, and Pit the Pendulum is one of the most iconic visually. So that's my last 2 cents on this, because we're going to probably talk some more about this and some more when we delve deeper into some of the other Roger Corman films and some of the other Vincent Price and Poe films out there. So with that, I want to thank my guests for joining us for Conversations in Horror. It's been a pleasure talking about Roger Corman again, and I can't wait to talk about another film with him, which will be really soon. But I hope that everyone out there listening will learn to appreciate Roger Corman and his influences on the film arts. And he is a person that is sadly missed by a lot of people, and his influences are numerous and immeasurable. Thank you so much for joining us for Conversation in Horror. Check out our podcast, Conversations in 4 Color. Check out our previous episodes on your favorite podcast apps. We are everywhere now. Thank you so much, and have a great day.
Nevermore.
Conversations in Horror is a Broken Lighthouse Pictures production, produced by Kevin L. Powers, executive produced by Kelly A. Inoka, and originally filmed via Zoom technology. Conversations in Horror is hosted by Kevin L. Powers and co-hosted by various horror film lovers and filmmakers. To learn more about Mr. Powers, please make sure to check out his Patreon page and other social media platforms. Conversations in Horror is copyright 2024 Broken Lighthouse Pictures production.